To the structural side, and I think you're a benefit corporation, and I think we've all been involved in some capacity of working with getting Florida to become a state that accepts benefit corporations, which is a moving thing. Maybe if you give a little bit on why you created your model as that.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
What it is, and what it is a little bit too for anybody that doesn't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were pleased. Clean the World actually testified to the Senate Rules Committee when the B Corp legislation was going through. I had the privilege of testifying to the committee. When B Corps passed, we passed 5 subcommittees, the House and the Senate, without a single no vote. So in the day and age of the politics that we have, even in the state of Florida, that's pretty amazing. For us, when I take you back to when we were sitting in that garage and we were scraping soap, and we really had no idea what our business model was going to be. I actually thought our model was going to be a purely philanthropic model, that we would ask people for money, and when they saw what we were doing, they would say, this is the most amazing thing I've ever heard of, and I'll just give you, millions of dollars to do what you have to do. This is from a guy who ran a global, tech sale, had no idea how to do philanthropy, had no idea how to do social impact company. So when we asked a bunch of folks, especially in 2009, when the economy was crashed and the endowments were down, everybody said no to us. So we had to figure out a way to get capital in order to grow the organization. So we started off, like Debbie's company, like Bajalia, we started off as a 501c3, and then we created this program. We had some breaks that happened in 2009, including Katie Couric did a piece on us on CBS Evening News. Shortly after that, in early 2010, the Haiti earthquake happened. We had already been in Haiti. That first CBS Evening News piece documented us in Haiti doing soap distributions. So we actually then had a problem where it went from nobody was calling and wanting to sign up to our program to all of a sudden after Haiti earthquake, everybody was calling and wanting to sign up to our program. And we had the reverse issue, which is, first it was we didn't have capital to keep the company going, and then it became we didn't have capital to manage the demand that was coming in. So we, at that time, set up a for-profit entity as a hybrid so that we could essentially have all the tools in the toolbox available to us with respect to taking in capital. So if you were a donor, you wanted to go the philanthropy route, you could go through the 501c3. If you were a social investor, wanted to invest, you could come in through the for-profit. The way we structured it originally was the 501c3 was the main organization that contracted with all of the hotels. So those 4,000 hotels would all sign up directly with the 501c3. And then inside of that, we had a staffing company that had an exclusive operating agreement with the not-for-profit that I was the owner of. And so as the not-for-profit got bigger, the staffing company got bigger, and so we thought that we could attract investors to that staffing company. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. B Corps come about. We help lead. We become the first B Corp in the state of Florida. We then do the B Labs certification. We become B Labs certified as a B Corp. It's really the gold standard for B Corps. And so actually recently, we restructured our organization because we continue to be drawn into a lot of areas, international. We're in Asia. We want to go into mainland China. We want to go into the Middle East. We want to go into Latin America. And to date, it's been very hard to get an investor to want to invest in basically a staffing company that really only has 2 or 3 big customers, the not-for-profits. So what we've done and what our board's approved, and now we are going through the back end, is we're taking the entire recycling program, those 4,000 customers, out of the not-for-profit, and we're moving them into the B Corp. And the emergence of the B Corp really has allowed us to do that, because now we're able to look at folks and go, well, we're not just moving it to a for-profit. Typically, somebody would say, well, if you're moving to for-profit, you're just trying to make a lot of money. It's not what we're trying to do. We're taking it to a for-profit company that pays taxes, but it's a company that has a mission element to it. It has very clearly, in our case, the ability, the focus to reduce landfill waste and save lives. And so the emergence of the B Corp has now allowed us to take those customers out of the not-for-profit, put it in the for-profit, into the B Corp, which is now a much more attractive play to investors, because now an investor is not investing in a staffing company, they're now investing in a products company that has 4,000 customers, that has an international program, that's got all of the growing side of it. So it's been real interesting as we've learned, as we've done this. We were not genius. This wasn't sitting in a garage and us being real brilliant and deciding how we were going to do this. It was literally a lot of nights of sitting there crying in the fetal position, wondering how I was going to feed my kids, and just trying to survive and trying to figure out, how we were going to keep it going. So anyway, from a structural standpoint, you can see we've a lot of trial and error, and hopefully you can figure out the right way for you without having to go through the crying in the fetal position part.
So I think how much time do we have for Q&A? 10. So we'll start with somebody from the audience. Do we have anything?
Yeah, I mean, it was just a lot of learning. We have some great resources. Debbie mentioned Rollins College. Rollins has a great philanthropy center. So for us, we were able to get connected up with the philanthropy center. We had, just sitting in there and going by course, not-for-profit accounting, donors, those sort of things. Now, the interesting thing about Clean the World is we have never done a good job getting donations. Matter of fact, that's an area for us that has always been very hard. We are, from a cash perspective, if I take out the gift in kind, from a cash perspective, we're about a $6 million a year company. When you add gift in kind, we're about a $10 million a year company. Most of that is earned income. So the challenge that we've always had is folks don't want to donate to a not-for-profit that's making money. They feel like we've got a bunch of money coming in and we don't need it and we're not starving. And so it is absolutely one of the things that's driven me around social enterprise and creating B Corps is because sometimes, and this is just my own perspective, sometimes the philanthropy side of it is like, I don't get it, So I've struggled with that, and that's what's driven us to create our own income, to create our own means to be able to grow. But, we just had to learn it. I actually am a guy who, I don't have a college degree. It was just a matter of figuring it out and trying to learn all the elements. And so we've become very smart at it, enough to know that we need to continue to do earned income. We need to continue to figure out ways to drive the business side. But now that we're actually getting into Clean the World, we're getting into a lot of on-the-ground programming now. We just launched a program in Kenya where we're hitting 4,000 school children. And so it's very important for us to have a philanthropy side. It's part of the restructuring for our purposes will help us raise more money because we're taking the earned income out of the not-for-profit. And now it is truly a not-for-profit that only earns what donors will bring to the table in terms of the programming. So we think that purity is also going to help us moving forward. And
Yeah, I just want to mention too, I think that's a really good question because I think so many millennials think they have to know everything before they get started. I always, build it and they will come. The consultants, the lawyers, the people that know what they know, you don't have to know everything. You just have to have a passion for something that makes you, I love the movie The Help. There was a line in there that's like, someone told someone, write about it what bothers you, even if it bothers no one else. So look at that thing that bothers you. Like each of us, something bothered us that maybe no one else was as mad about as we were. And we went after that one thing. I didn't know anything about a nonprofit. I still, like Sean, suck at raising money on a nonprofit. Our for-profit helps fund, 80% of our nonprofit right now. But I have to get better at that. But I've found other people that are good at that. And so one of the things that you learn when you start an entrepreneurial initiative, the things that you don't know, you can find people to help you and to step up to the plate, or other people that are going to get passionate about the thing you're passionate about. They might not have been a starter, but they might be a support person. They might be your right hand. They might be a support. But I see so many people afraid to start because they're afraid to fail. And our world needs us right now worse than anything. There are children dying every day. There are women being battered and abused. There are children that don't have an opportunity to attend school. Our world needs us to show up with these creative, divine answers. And we can't be afraid to fail. Failure is part of the process. And because every one of those failures, you learn what doesn't work. And then the next time it does. And so I just really want to caution you, you won't know everything. We won't have all the answers. But you know what? If I would have seen the staircase I'm on now, the first day, I would have never taken it. We're working in 28 countries around the world. I mean, someone said to me the other day, wait, you went to HSN and you told them you wanted to bring third world things from villages and put it on air? And they said yes. I'm like, I know, can you believe it? I couldn't believe it myself. I was standing there pitching, and they're like, are you going to go on TV? And I'm like, sure. I'm like, what did I do? And now I'm on TV selling stuff from third world villages, telling these women's stories.
I think that's the #1 differentiating factor from those that are successful and those that are unsuccessful. Like, we weren't, more talented or smarter than anyone else. We were just willing to do things other people were not willing to do. That's literally the only differentiating factor, I believe, from a successful person from an unsuccessful person.
And we kept showing up and figuring it out. Show up every day and persevere and be present in it every day. You don't get to be in a fetal position when other people are relying on you. You just don't. I mean, you can for one day. You can crawl in bed. You can for one day, but then you got to get over it and you got to get up because there are people relying on you. And the more people that are relying on you, the more you have to show up. So it's just getting started.
And a final comment on what on a personal note, on the academic side, what academia is becoming, probably Sean will probably agree, I can't wait to talk to you about this, but Rollins for him, and I know UT for me, at my age going back and working on the projects I'm working on, college is not something I'm getting because it might help me someday. Not only every course and degree is relevant, every class and professor I'm using, UT is a sharp tool for me right now to help my career change from the web developer marketer I was 4 years ago to whatever it is I'm becoming at this point in my career. So education is archaic in some senses, but if you go back to it later in life, it becomes a tool because you can negotiate it better. On the philanthropic side, anything you know about philanthropy today is going to change. Sean Parker wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal last June called Philanthropy for Hacking, and looked at philanthropy as this now founder of Napster, investor and starter of Facebook, as philanthropy is antiquated. These institutions don't want to change. If you remember Sean Parker, he created Napster with no money in his bedroom and upset the music industry. Now he's rich beyond anybody's wildest dreams, and he's focused on disrupting philanthropy. So if you're in philanthropy and you think it's going to stay the same, you're wrong. So do we have another question, I think?
Yeah, great questions. All those are the exact types of scenarios that we have to look at. All of your IP protection, which is costly, which is why, as I talked about, the hotel industry, the global hotel industry wants us to go into these places. We've got a few, Jumeirah and some other big partners that want us to go there. There's some other, to get into Dubai, there are some initial costs just to get sort of set up within the construct of the way they operate there that are six-figure costs. But IP protection is a big deal. Understanding how a social enterprise, for instance, we have in the United States not-for-profits. They don't necessarily have not-for-profits in other countries. So you pay in taxes. Are there other grants and those that are available to you? We've looked at all of the different models in terms of licensing, finding operating partners, and then trying to go do it ourselves. We've had a couple of failed licensing / kind of operating partner endeavors. We are so, our brand is so important to us, what the brand stands for, the SOPs around how we operate our program, to be able to offer a kind of the same program to every Marriott hotel, whether that Marriott is in Hong Kong or London or Toledo, Ohio. So us giving that over to somebody else has been a challenge. So we now are trying to go after it ourselves, where we operate it, we're in total control of it. That just takes more capital. So for instance, in the Middle East, folks want us to go there, and we're telling them right now we can't until we raise some capital, until we get the ability to go in, establish, set up staff, do the things we want to do. That's the only way we're going to be able to operate. And that's a tough thing for us to weigh, because you got folks there that want to give us their soap. And there's children in Syria that need soap right now, that are in camps that you want to get it to them. So these are some of the things you weigh sometimes with a social enterprise company. Do you just go, even though it may dilute your brand, it may not be the right thing to do it, somebody may it's not the right time, you don't have enough money, or do you wait to make a smarter business decision to go in when you're ready, and that's when you start getting soap? And so those are some of the things that within a social enterprise you have to struggle with sometimes. It's that business versus impact side of it that sometimes pulls you in different directions. So it's a great question.
the white knight syndrome, they call it. So I experienced that firsthand when we went to Haiti and lived there for a while. We were testing a business model different than what we have now. And it's the typical white American comes over to help someone in the slums. And that's kind of what I was explaining in my presentation. It's no longer the days where we can just donate food, housing, healthcare. It's an antiquated approach. That's putting a Band-Aid on the problem rather than empowering from the bottom up and allowing these people to solve their own problems. And that's why we felt like early childhood education was the greatest need, because we're essentially establishing a network of people that will be able to act and solve their own problems rather than having other people do it for them. And they're very prideful people. A lot of these USAID, World Bank, UKAID, I've seen corruption firsthand. Hundreds of thousands of dollars being donated to an unsustainable project that, so a story of ours is we contacted these NGOs and we cold called them. The first NGO we were working with in Nigeria was setting up the initial home educator network for us. He received a $300,000 grant from World Bank, a $300,000 grant from UKAID. We get there, he had no operations, nothing. He had 3 cars, 2 smartphones, and an iPad, and he lived in the slums. We couldn't believe it that these organizations, these huge prestigious organizations, are just checking off a box. Oh, we donated $300,000 to AIDS relief in Africa. And everyone and their mother has an NGO in the slums, you'll realize. It's all about what you look like on the superficial level, even though you might not have any substance behind it. So these people weren't even vetting these organizations before they gave them funding. So we realized this corruption firsthand of just donating. This white knight syndrome is not the way to a successful change in the world.
But I do think that we have a place that we're needed. So when we're creating jobs, they can produce everything I need them to produce, but if they don't have a marketing arm, if they don't have someone to come there and buy it all from them, they can't create the economy. One of the things about most of the economies that I work in, they are too poor to have an economy within themselves. The money has to come from somewhere. I'm a strong believer that it's in trade, not aid. There are places aid is important. I believe during an earthquake, during a catastrophe, during things like that, I believe aid has a place. But there's a moment that has to stop because it becomes dependency instead of interdependency. And then it becomes hostility because no one wants to stay dependent on anyone when they are capable of working. And so I think in our case, we don't own anything in the field. We help partner with business entities and businesses and NGOs and nonprofits that are creating jobs. So we do buy-sell agreements and buy-sell arrangements. Now, we may have to set up a quality control office in a country. It will still try to be run by nationals if that's possible. And we'll probably do it within one of the enterprises that we presently are working in and have a reputation with. But there is a need for every global business sometimes to have an office overseas. But it's how you do that. And if we can leave and the office can continue to run, we've done a great job. If it stays dependent on us, then we've not. Then we did do, the white rescue, which we really don't want to do. And it's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. We love Peace Corps workers and missionaries and all of these people starting things, but when they leave, it's over. And that's not how we're going to create a sustainable work around the world. The global, and you guys, if you think it's not important, you've got another thing coming. Where women are employed or educated, there are no terrorist cells. Okay? It matters to us. We think what happens over there doesn't matter. But I can assure you, in Nigeria, where those kids are being educated, there are going to be less terrorist cells. There are going to be less rebels. It matters to us in a greater way. We work with the Department of State. They invite us into countries to help them. And the Department of State says to me, Debbie, we love what you're doing because as long as we put we put the money in the hands of your women, we take guns out of the hands of our children. We've got to think about that, guys.
Yeah.
This global work, social enterprise, has a much bigger meaning than ever before.
This is actually something that we've had to learn. When we started, our model was very much just get soap into the hands of NGO partners. They would go in and donate soap into areas that basically didn't have access. And so this response, actually, we've learned throughout time that where's the sustainability in that method. So we actually merged with a company last year, Global Soap Project, which was the other largest soap recycler in the world, who was doing a lot more on-the-ground programming, social microenterprising, micro-lending, more of sustainable activities in order to, you've got different scenarios. You've got some that don't have access. So we come in, give them access, teach them, and then try and figure out what's the long-term solution in that area so that we don't have to keep donating soap. Most places have local soap makers. Usually the price is very high. That's a supply-demand issue. If we can start to create more demand, we may be able to help those soap makers get more raw materials so they can start to create more soap and make it a sustainable. So we've actually shifted a bit. We do a lot more micro-lending to get soap equipment into the hands of those who need it. And then also the question you asked about the hotels. We see major population areas for us like Europe, the United States, mainland China are good places for us to have these big recycling centers. But there's a lot of places across Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, where we're not going to put a big recycling center. But there's hotels there, and there's need right outside the front door. So we're developing a program now. We have one going in Nicaragua and one in India, where we are taking taking a group, Sundari, I think is a group in India, and we're teaching them how to operate our program, how to pick up from the hotels, how to do their own recycling with very rudimentary machines, and then do their own donations locally. So it's all self-sustaining within their hotels and their areas that go into there. But that's something that we've learned. That whole sort of learning process is something we had to figure out throughout the last few years. That just dumping it doesn't work. We've got to figure out a long-term sustainable solution.
Well, I want to thank the three of you for participating and the amazing things that you're doing for the world right out of Central Florida. And thanks for being part of Gasparilla Interactive today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.